Okay, so today we are going to do a deep dive into some ancient wisdom.
Sounds intriguing.
We are going to be cracking open the book of Leviticus.
Okay.
Now, before you think we're just about to list off a bunch of outdated rules,
Right.
we're actually focusing on chapters 25 through 27,
Okay.
which deal with some surprisingly relevant issues.
Oh.
I'm talking land ownership, debt, social safety nets, stuff that still makes headlines today.
It's true. Those are very current.
Right.
Yeah, these chapters offer a fascinating glimpse into how the Israelites tried to create a just and equitable society
Thousands of years ago.
thousands of years ago. And what's even more fascinating is how these ancient principles might offer solutions to some very modern problems we face.
Right. It's like looking through a window into a completely different economic and social system.
Yeah.
So to really understand the significance of these laws, we kind of need to set the scene a little bit.
Okay.
We're talking about the Israelites, fresh out of Egypt, on the verge of entering the Promised Land.
Right.
What was life like for them back then?
Picture this. They're transitioning from a nomadic, often oppressed group
Right.
to a settled people about to inherit their own land.
Right.
This wasn't just about geography. It was about establishing their identity,
Right.
their freedom, their very future.
Wow.
And in that context, land becomes everything.
Okay, so land as the bedrock of their entire existence.
Yes.
It makes sense that they would create some pretty strict rules around it.
Strict, yes, but some might even say radical.
Okay.
Take the concept of the sabbatical year,
Okay.
outlined in Leviticus 25.1-7. Every seventh year, they were commanded to let their fields lie fallow,
Wow.
to just let the land rest.
I can already hear the modern day farmers freaking out. Imagine telling someone they had to leave their fields unplanted for an entire year.
Right.
That's a tough sell.
It seems unimaginable to us, right?
Yeah, it does.
But that's how ingrained this concept of rest and restoration was in their worldview.
Right.
It wasn't just about sustainability, though that was a key factor.
Okay.
It was about acknowledging that the land ultimately belonged to God,
Right.
a powerful counterpoint to the human desire to own and exploit.
So letting the land rest was an act of faith and a reminder of who was really in control.
Yes.
But practically speaking, how did they survive a whole year without harvesting crops?
Leviticus 25.2022 gives us a clue. It basically says that year 6 had to be so bountiful that it could sustain them for 3 years.
Wow.
The 6th year, the 7th year of rest, and even into the 8th year until the new harvest came in.
Wow. Talk about long-term planning. I can only imagine the kind of community cooperation that would require.
Yes.
It's like this system forced them to rely on each other and trust that there would be enough for everyone.
Exactly. It challenged their assumptions about scarcity and abundance,
Right.
fostering a sense of shared responsibility and interdependence.
Yeah.
It's a powerful example of how even seemingly religious laws had profound social and economic implications.
And it makes you wonder if we could learn something from that today
Yeah,
in our often hyper-individualistic world.
for sure.
But if you thought the sabbatical year was a big deal, hold on tight because we're about to explore something even more radical.
Okay, let's do it.
The Jubilee.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Every 50 years, the Israelites were commanded to hit the reset button on their entire society.
Okay. I have to admit, the idea of a societal reset button is both fascinating and a little terrifying.
Yeah.
Break it down for us. What exactly happened during the Jubilee year?
In essence, the Jubilee, or Yovel as it's known in Hebrew, was all about liberation and restoration.
Okay.
Leviticus 25.8-17 lays it out. All land that had been sold due to hardship,
Oh.
all debts, were completely wiped clean.
Wow.
Families who had been forced to sell their ancestral lands because of poverty or misfortune had the right to return.
Right.
Even those who had fallen into debt servitude were freed.
Wow. It's like hitting the reset button on wealth inequality and generational poverty. It's hard to imagine something that radical happening today.
Right. It challenges our entire notion of property ownership and economic mobility.
It does.
Imagine if every 50 years, the playing field was leveled, giving everyone a chance to start fresh, regardless of past misfortunes.
Yeah.
A powerful concept, and one that has resonated with social reformers for centuries.
It's like this built-in system was designed to prevent the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few. I can only imagine the debates this must spark if we tried to implement something like this today.
Absolutely. It forces us to ask some hard questions about fairness, social mobility, and our responsibility to those less fortunate.
Right.
The Jubilee was a radical attempt to address these very issues within the context of their society.
It really makes you think about the long-term impact of economic policies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But let's zoom in a bit.
Okay.
We've been talking about land as this universally valuable thing.
Right.
But Leviticus 25.2934 gets into some interesting nuances.
Okay.
It seems like there were different rules for city properties versus those in rural areas.
That's right.
Okay.
The text distinguishes between property rights in walled cities versus open villages.
Okay.
If you had to sell your house in a walled city, you essentially had a year to buy it back.
Okay.
After that year, it belonged to the purchaser, no Jubilee reset for urban real estate.
Oh, interesting. So even back then, city life came with its own set of rules.
Right.
It makes you wonder if that was a reflection of the growing value and permanence of urban property, even in those times.
A likely explanation.
Yeah.
As cities grew in importance,
Right.
so did the need to create a more stable system of property ownership within their walls.
Right.
But as you pointed out, there were exceptions to these rules,
Right.
even within the intricate system of the Jubilee.
And one of the most notable exceptions involved the Levites.
Yes.
The priestly tribe.
Right.
What was their situation?
Leviticus 25.32-34 specifically states that the Levites had a permanent right to redeem their houses
Okay.
regardless of the Jubilee cycle.
Okay.
This makes sense, considering their unique role in Israelite society.
Right.
As religious leaders, they needed to be able to perform their duties without the fear of losing their homes due to economic hardship.
It's like they were creating a stable base for their religious class,
Yeah.
ensuring that the Levites could focus on their spiritual role without the constant worry of property ownership.
Right.
It really highlights just how intertwined the social, economic, and religious aspects of their society were.
Precisely. And this interconnectedness becomes even more apparent when we look at their laws regarding lending money,
Okay.
which might be one of the most radical departures from our modern sensibilities.
Okay, I have to admit, this is the part that always blows my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Leviticus 25.3538 lays out this idea of wait for
Okay.
interest-free loans.
Yeah.
It seems like a completely foreign concept in today's world
Right.
where debt and interest are practically inescapable.
It's a truly radical notion, isn't it?
It is.
Imagine a world where lending money wasn't about profit, but about helping your neighbor in need. That was the core principle behind this law,
Okay.
to prevent the exploitation of fellow Israelites, especially those already struggling financially.
It's like they were trying to create a system where debt didn't equal a life sentence of financial hardship.
Exactly. It was about recognizing the inherent dignity of each person and ensuring that a moment of need didn't become a permanent state of indebtedness.
Right.
This wasn't just about economics, it was about social justice.
You know, it makes you wonder if we could learn something from this ancient approach.
Yeah.
In a world where predatory lending practices are rampant,
Right.
where people are drowning in student loan debt,
Yeah.
maybe this ancient principle of compassionate lending has something to offer us today.
It's a powerful idea and one that continues to inspire conversations about ethical economics and social responsibility. But Leviticus doesn't just deal with the material world of land and money.
Right.
It also delves into the deeply personal realm of faith and religious devotion,
Okay.
which brings us to chapter 27 and the fascinating topic of vows and valuations.
Okay. So we've covered land ownership, social safety nets, ethical lending. Now we're getting into the world of personal commitments made to the divine.
Right.
And let me tell you, folks, it gets pretty intense.
Okay.
We're talking about people dedicating their possessions, their livestock, even their entire houses to the temple.
It's true.
It's like stepping back in time to a world where religious devotion was expressed not just through prayer and rituals, but through these very tangible offerings.
Yeah.
What drove people to make these vows?
Well,
And how did this whole system work in practice?
imagine feeling overwhelmed with gratitude for a blessing received,
Okay.
or maybe seeking atonement for a wrong committed.
Right.
In those moments, an Israelite might make a vow to God,
Yeah, okay.
promising to give something of value to the temple as a tangible expression of their devotion
Right.
or a desire for divine favor.
So it was about putting your money where your faith was, so to speak.
Right.
But it wasn't just a matter of showing up at the temple gates with a goat and saying, this one's for you.
Right. Not exactly.
Right.
Leviticus 27 gets into some meticulous detail about how these vows were handled.
Okay.
It wasn't a free-for-all of offering.
Right.
There's an intricate system of valuations involved.
Okay, so tell me more about this valuation system.
Okay.
Who decided what a goat was worth, or a piece of land, or even a person's labor.
This is where the priests came in. According to Leviticus 27.22, they were tasked with assessing the worth of everything that was vowed,
Wow.
from livestock and land to personal possessions,
Wow.
and even a person's labor.
Wow.
They had specific guidelines for determining value based on age, gender, and even the type of work involved.
Wow. Talk about a tough job.
Right.
I can only imagine the priests walking around with their clipboards trying to determine the market value of a flock of doves.
Yeah.
Or someone's firstborn donkey.
Right.
But what happened once something was valued? Was that it? Did people just hand over their offerings and call it a day?
Well, here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
While the vow was considered a sacred commitment,
Right.
there was actually an option for those who had a change of heart.
Okay.
It was called redemption.
Redemption. So like a divine get-out-of-jail-free card for those who suddenly realized they couldn't part with their prized cow.
You could say that Leviticus 27.13 explains that if someone wanted to retract their vow, they could essentially buy back their offering from the temple.
Okay.
But there was a catch, and it was a significant one.
Okay, what's the catch?
They had to add a fifth of the assessed value on top of the original price.
Ouch. Talk about a penalty for second thoughts.
Right.
It seems like the temple always came out ahead in these deals,
Yeah.
but I can see how this system would have discouraged frivolous vows
Mm-hmm.
and ensured that those who made them were truly committed.
Exactly. It added a layer of seriousness and consequence to the whole process.
Right.
These chapters of Leviticus,
Yeah.
while challenging to unpack, offer us such a rich tapestry of ancient life, weaving together their legal, economic, social, and religious worlds.
It's been an incredible journey exploring these ancient texts.
It has been fascinating.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Leviticus,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways you hope our listeners will carry with them?
I think what's most striking is a radical nature of these laws.
Right.
Imagine a society where concepts like land redistribution, debt forgiveness, and social safety nets were not just ideals,
Right.
but were woven into the fabric of their legal and religious systems.
It's true.
It challenges us to confront some fundamental questions about fairness,
Right.
equality, and our responsibility to the most vulnerable in society.
It's a powerful reminder that the pursuit of justice and compassion has been a human endeavor for centuries.
Right.
Even if the solutions have looked different throughout history.
It's true.
And while we may not adopt these ancient laws wholesale,
Right.
they offer a valuable lens through which to examine our own values and systems.
Precisely. And perhaps they might even inspire us to imagine new and creative ways to address the challenges we face today.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure diving deep into Leviticus with you.
A big thank you to our expert for guiding us through this fascinating exploration of Leviticus.
Of course, my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has left you with new insights and a thirst for more.
Yes.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.